Hey everybody, we are back with another TV show spoiler review. I just wrapped up season 2, or depending on how you view it, season 3 of Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. This is the Iliaster arc, or Road to Destiny arc, uh, that is a very long one. I didn't even realize how long it was. Um, if you include, like, of course, like the filler episodes, which is kind of standard for a lot of anime, but you also had a few because I watched this on Hulu. You also got like a few episodes that wasn't uh put to the English dub for Western audience. I could assume why, uh but in large part, well, one, I think the ones I saw had some depictions where you can see, like, because you know how when you get certain cards, it's a little different from what you probably see from the Japanese variation, where some female cards are a little scantily clad, or they're using words that they have to restructure because, like, for example, the dark magician's uh, name, or no, well, yeah, it's kind of the same thing, but his attack is dark magic. This is where we always grew up listening his attack, but in the Japanese sub, it's black magic, and of course, like the American standards and practices, I guess, you know, don't want occultist kind of stuff on the Western front, so they have, four kids have to restructure it to be, dark magic. Like, it's any much of a difference, but in large part, this is because there is a final season, which I will eventually get to. Maybe not this year, but at some point going on, either by the end of the year or going into the next year. Probably eventually get to the final season of 5Ds, which is all sub, because in case you don't know, there was some issues behind the scenes, for kids and everything like that. So the final season didn't have an English, uh, mandate to be pushed forward for us to get all the English actors involved to do the final thing. Is a whole thing. I found this out like at least several years ago, which it was very disappointing because I love Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds. Uh, Once I get through that and do like a spoiler review, because just like with I did with the final season of GX, I think I mentioned that when I covered the spoiler review for that final season, which you can check out on my YouTube channel, youtube.com/talkative Carl. Speaking of which, please leave a like, comment if you like these reviews, such as this, and me covering like comics, and definitely check out my Twitch channel where I go live playing all kinds of games. You can check with me live there as well. Links are in the description. And it's got recent news subscribers on both Twitch and YouTube. So thank you all for the support as well. And I got a couple of surprises coming uh, uh, in the next week. But I'm also going to be bringing back. I had to put a pause on it. If you've been tracking my chaotic lore videos and my anime psychology stuff, I had to put a pause on that for the October through December, because I was focusing on my Christmas movie reviews and Halloween movie reviews. So I had to put a pause on that for a while until the coming new year. So by the end of the month, get into the beginning of February, I will be beginning the chaotic lore videos. So they're coming back. I'm just making sure that I get everything all structured. Uh, uh, as you know, the anime psychology videos, they're not gonna be like super frequent. It probably come like every couple of months or so, because it's like, I want to make sure I got like enough research and everything like that, and everything structured so I can do like a decent video to get as accurate as possible. Because I'm not a psychologist, I just uh, think it's very interesting. I love like getting into the minds of characters like that. But anyway, I just thought I'd let you guys know what's coming up soon. And anyway, so this new arc, uh, after the events of the Earthbound Immortals, the bonds between Satellite and New Domino City has been like kind of reforged. Uh, there's been like constructions of bridges. That way, this whole classism situation has more or less been, it didn't fix everything, but it's definitely better than what was. Like the Satellite people aren't treated so harshly. There's been a new director, Lazar, has been appointed uh, uh, from second command to like command since Goodwin. Well, that's by and large Goodwin's dead. Uh, so Lazar is, by and large taking over, but he has uh, a new boss. Well, three new bosses. These Iliaster guys. This big old guy with like a very freaky, bushy eyebrow that covers all on the side of his like face, named Jacob. Then he got a 20 something kind of age guy. Uh, uh, Crap. What is his doggone name? Primo. I can't believe I'm blanking on his doggone name. Primo. And then you got this youngest, kid. Looks like he's, 10 or 11, something like that, named Lester. And they all are stepping in as Lazar's boss. And then for some reason, they come down through, it's seeming like a meteorite, but it's like a slab from space into the ground. Now, it just gets kind of like weird and confusing on like Lazar is like waiting for the new boss, and he's freaking out because Lazar, he's always been kind of zany, but it kind of ramped up the zaniness in him to be like the goofy comic relief, because he seems like a little bit more, in the first season he seems a little bit more sinister of a character, but they kind of like, I don't know, he's not the only one. I think him and Akiza, we'll get to Akiza for a second, because Akiza's like her and Alexis and My Valentine. Like I just like, I love, they're a great female protagonist in the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise. Probably my favorite three out of the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise. And time after time, once they get to the second season, they get the they get their teeth taken away, because they had like they're like early on they always, I don't know what's up with the Yu-Gi-Oh. It's one of the few things I do not like about the Yu-Gi-Oh franchise is how they treat the female characters. Either they're relegated to cheerleaders, or even if they are like early on like strong duelists, as soon as time goes on, more often when it gets to the second season, they lose their grit, at least somewhat. I think Alexis still in some capacity had some teeth in her uh, for most of the time in GX, but not to the same degree. She lost more often, as the season went on than she won. And Akiza, not this. It's like it's Alexis, Akiza, and then Mai at the bring out the rear because they're like awesome, and it's just I don't know. It's story. And I don't even blame the anime. Is the manga probably is probably like that too. I don't know. I really want to get more of the read more of the Yu-Gi-Oh manga, but I just I do not like that. But anyway, uh, uh, oh, while I'm thinking about it, because I'm probably gonna be glossing over it. A lot of the characters you see in the first season, these little supporting characters you see have, all have been just pretty much like just they're just poof gone. You never see them again. Those Riley and like those other guys, you know, and then the old guy Izanagi and uh, uh, the other guy who was like running the a prisoner who was pretty much kind of one of those prisoners that run in the prison and keeping other prisoners in line. Like I forgot his name, Tanner, I think. Uh, they're completely gone. You never see them again. I don't know what the hell happened to them, but it's no loss because they didn't really add much to anything. So it's kind of funny. Like, wow, it's like, and then Riley's card, that booster card, and it's like he makes a couple of returns in most of Yusei's play, duels, but never once mentioned Riley ever again. I'm not sure. Maybe they went off to have a better life somewhere now, like the satellite and New Domino City has been brought together again, so they got better lives. I will just go with that, and we never see them again. Uh, so because we already got enough, I guess, because it'll be too full. And I get it. It's too many people. Unlike GX, where you pretty much kind of had like a plethora of people because it's a school, so you had enough time to focus on each one. And, most of the supporting characters in GX are duelists, so they can afford to, have some time to shine. Riley and the others, and Tanner, Izanagi, not much of duelists. So it's like, what's the point of even having them? And then you already got Crow, Jack, Akiza, even to some extent Luna and Leo, because the sister is a signer too, so it's like she has to be there, and by proxy her brother. And then of course Trudge and Mina and Carly, they have to be there. But I think by and large for the story that's being told, that's more than enough. So Lazar heads to this location and meets with the bosses, and somehow like, okay, how do you get contact that he's gonna be meeting new bosses? You don't question the fact that they come in on a meteorite. You don't find that freaking bizarre? I mean, it's like, especially it's the future, so it's like, or present to their point of view, but it's the future, and you don't bother to question how. First of all, you get contacted by people who's coming in on a freaking slab of a meteorite. Secondly, you don't like, just like, well, I guess they don't even use this as an excuse, because more often than not, these guys do things in order to cover up certain actions. Like Lester at some point infiltrated Luna and Leo's school to gauge Luna's skills as a duelist, and brings her to his house, but then it disappears. So it's like it never happened. They couldn't even use that as an excuse to say like, oh, we came in on a plane, disguised the meteor as a plane or something like that, and make people think that's what they saw. Don't even do that, or at the very least, if they're coming in on a meteorite, uh, they can just like pretend that they meet them at the airport or something to try to just, you know, if you're trying to pull this facade, it's just like, okay, you're not doing a very good job, and nobody's questioning it. And it's like, I'm pretty sure if this was an abridged version, I'm pretty sure they would point that out in like a very hilarious moment, like, sir, we're not going to question the fact that they came in on a meteorite. It's like, don't question the new directors. But that's the thing. You can say it's anime, but even there's only so much you can suspend your disbelief to the point where it's like, okay, that is just way too ridiculous not to question. So anyway, you have these new directors. Now you don't question the fact that one of them was a child, at least a child to their point of view. So now, because their plan is to complete this kind of grand design, and they have a plan to destroy New Domino City, because ultimately they view Synchros and the whole situation with like Yusei's father with the Inner D and causing massive destruction, because as a spoiler, they come from the future, and they see like Synchros as you get more depth into more so who their boss is in the third and final season, or fourth, or whatever how you want to view it, the final season, which I'll get to eventually. But if you Synchros as the cause for the second Inner D, because Synchros became so popular and so used, and to the point where a second Inner D caused a devastation of the world, because the Inner D reactors has been duplicated various parts of the world and causes massive chain reaction that causes this devastation. So they come back through a time stream, I guess, and decide to start warning people about the effects of synchro uses, or what to do to prevent this catastrophe. They decide to just try to use these Mechlor Emperor cards to neutralize synchro monsters. It's kind of like they're Mechlors are pretty much like Synchro's kryptonite. And they're trying to use the grand design to make sure they cause this kind of destruction of the city. They intercept the main destruction by causing it earlier, and was English dub. So they saying like, oh, we will transport the people. Oh, they're not gonna die, or some might, but not everybody, and we'll bring them to another dimension, or I guess to the future or something like that. Because Jacob, Primo, and Lester is like the last, one of the few last remnants of humanity. They trying to pretty much like negate the destructions they were privy to in the main timeline, because time travel can be very confusing. But they're trying to circumvent like if there's a TVA for anime, which kind of reminds me, I did after the Loki season 1, I did like a video. You can check out on my YouTube channel a video of certain anime villains if they got like the Loki treatment and like the TVA kind of pull them in kind of thing. You check out that video. I go in full depth because I thought it was so interesting to just trying to make a bad guy good, or at least try to in the same way that like Loki. But anyway, it was kind of like, what the TVA just come in to stop Primo, Lester, and Jacob, saying like, you're going off your, the main path. But anyway, they tried to erase the main branch. It's like, they go back in time because it's like this is like the main branch. They time travel, all the way back here and try to Loki kind of put it in a very more succinct way by when you go to an apocalyptic event, because there's once everything is going to be destroyed anyway eventually, there's no further branches going to be coming along. So they go back in time, cause the destruction right here, and therefore this horrible future won't happen because there's been like a change in the past, so that way they can start a new branch where it's going to be a little bit more prosperity because there's no inner D destruction. So that's where pretty much their goal. So where Yusei and his friends comes involved here, they're being told by Trudge and the others, like Mina and Trudge are running like sector security now, and there's this like dual ghost thing, which turns out to be just like a robot who is being ran by the Iliaster people, and he's causing mayhem, trapping random duelists on the duel roads, and challenging them and causing them to crash once they lose. And they go to, I'm kind of glad they go to Yusei and his friends, because they saved the world before, so they'll go to them like, hey, since you saved the world before, can you step in and deal with this supposed ghost thing and nip this in the bud for us? And kind of rightly so from Crow. He kind of put in kind of like like a dickish way of putting it, but he's kind of had a point where it's like, yeah, we saved the world before, but you can't keep coming to us because we're not police. That's your job. You gotta handle it. And Trudge took to heart, and he goes to deal with it. I think that's the last time we ever see like Trudge ever duel again in the entire series. But I kind of like that kind of thing. It's like, yes, of course, it would make sense from the previous after the previous season that our saviors, we can go to them, but these are not like Superman or Batman. They haven't dedicated their lives to constantly save the world. They just happen to be thrust. The whole situation is thrust upon them, but that's not their call. They just want to be great duelists, compete. Work on duel runners, that kind of thing. They have lives. They didn't want to be just constant saviors of humanity. So of course they would deny it. Not deny it, but say like, no, I really don't want to get involved. We got a tournament coming up. We just want to just do our thing and just live our lives. So Trudge decides, yeah, you know what, Mina, they're right. We can't keep grunting every time something happens. So we're sector security. We have to do our job. So Trudge runs into the ghost, duels him, obviously lose, but he managed to get a piece of information in the process. and he warns Yusei and the others that synchros are useless against this thing. So, uh, now, like, Crow and the others are kind of feeling guilty because, if we would have gone and dealt with this like he came to us and asked, it's a whole hero's guilt thing. It's like a whole Spider-Man thing. It's like with great power comes great responsibility. It's not on them. They kind of take it personally because, like, if they would have stepped in, Truz wouldn't be in this situation. But it's like, you didn't know what was going to happen. You can't really put the blame on yourself because you wasn't in the wrong. They are police officers, and they take these kind of risks when they put on that badge. But Crow and the others go out looking for this thing. Yusei bumps into this ghost first, and he's challenged to a duel. They discover, like, okay, my synchro monster is not gonna be useful because it keep getting constantly absorbed by this Mechlord thing. But Yusei managed to just barely beat this thing and discover it's like a dual bot. And now they're trying to figure out who's behind the creation of these things. Now, initially, they were supposed to have been part of Sector Security's dual force for, like, kind of like, emergencies or whatever like that. But they pretty much like been like taken over or stolen or whatever. The program has been hacked or whatever. And while they're trying to uncover that mystery, they also run into Sherry, this French rich woman who has butlers, pretty much Alfred. This is Batman and Alfred, who is going after Iliaster, who went after her parents and probably in the sub killed them in order to gain access to something that's, her father wouldn't give up. So, she on this kind of vendetta. And Sherry might be, if not bisexual, definitely a lesbian, because it's kind of like the way she gives, like, Nakiza, there's like a brief dialogue exchange between her and Akiza where it's like, it's like, I forgot what the line was. It was like, I'll do you anytime you say Fudo, and you too, Akiza. And Akiza then started blushing. So it's like, oh, it's kind of like, of course, as anime Japanese, don't really like, I'm not sure how forward they usually are or progressive, as to say, but this is probably the first time I actually got like any kind of indication. It's like I watched this plenty of times, and maybe I picked up on it and probably blanked on it or forgotten about it because it's so short and kind of like a nothing kind of dialogue. But it's like once I pay attention for the review, I was like, oh, this is kind of like the first time you actually get a character that might be like an LGBTQ kind of character. Just the way like a certain dialogue exchange was. But of course they don't really explore that like that. But then, of course, you always got these little filler episodes. I'm not going to get into all that. But Primo is getting, like after, his dual boss getting defeated and like any other minion he gets involved to do his dirty work and gets stopped by Yusei. Now he's got like an ego thing. It's like, no, like I got to deal with Yusei because he made me look like a fool and I ain't having that. So this kind of like, perturbs Lester and Jacob because, like, you're losing focus on our master plan while you're trying to deal with your little ego with Yusei. It's not part of our plan. Check yourself kind of situation. And So like the new tournament is coming up now. You got this team Unicorn, who, of course, they always have these new adversaries along the way, and they always seems very, until after the duel's over, they always seem very in, not always but almost always adversary at first. They couldn't just treat it like a normal rivalry, uh, but it's like, like, you're going down, like snot nose, woo, woo, woo. It's like all that stuff, and then all of a sudden, like by the time duel ends, it's like, you could do this anytime. Yeah, it's like you was just acting like a complete ass before the duel started. It's like, now you do a complete 180. It's kind of like, it's like I don't really usually like that kind of stuff. You don't keep that same energy. You don't even act like a rival. Like a rival is kind of like something like you seen like well, no, I think Pokemon does it better sometimes, because when you get the initial rival with Ash, when it goes to like a new region, and he meets like a new rival for that new region, he keeps that same, kind of snot nosed energy all the way through, uh, until like Ash proves himself and beat that kid's ass, at the tournaments. Uh, they don't do that so much here, but anyway, you got Team Unicorn, and you got these like unicorn or horse based type of synchro monsters, and Team Unicorn really kind of like put like Team 5Ds through their paces, because one lures, because like each one kind of took down. Oh, here's the thing. Almost gloss over after the whole situation with Sherry, because her and Yusei was like, riding on Yusei's vehicle, being dueling against Sherry, who tried to recruit Yusei to her team to help combat Iliaster. And this is the time where, because Akiza wasn't initially a turbo duelist, but then after she started feeling that rush and this kind of like non-verbal communication between these turbo duelists, she wanted a piece of that. So she started to like get her dual runner license and being taught how to turbo duel. But this is where it's like, oh man, it is like night and day with her skills. It's not even the turbo duel, it's the fact that like even standard duels, it's just like she just, like I said, she lost a lot of her teeth, or thorns in her case, where it's like, man, it's like she was so much more of a badass in during the Earthbound Immortal arc. I don't know what the hell happened, but anyway, now she wants to be like a turbo duelist, and wants to be involved, because obviously it's hinted that she's into Yusei, and people point that out, and she gets all flustered about it. Uh, uh, but then after one of the other teams, Team Catastrophe, which is kind of like, hey, not to judge by a book by its cover, but you got a name like Team Catastrophe, they kind of come off as like straight up bad guys. But Primo gives them this card, Hookman, and he turns into like a real shadow creature and sabotages people's dual runners. He obviously they did it to Crow, and trying to like neutralize the competition so they can win by default kind of situation. So Akiza steps in, and that's where like they deal with Unicorn, and like Team Unicorn knocked out Jack Akiza very thoroughly. So now Yusei, because as a kid I was super focused into this match, because like, holy crap, Yusei has to deal with all three duelists all at once. That's like, oh my god, and he did it. He pulled it off, and it was like spectacular. Just holding on by the skin of his teeth, and knocked it out of the park. Uh, but then after they did with Team Catastrophe and Akiza got got by the Hook Man while she was trying to practice. So Crow, who's still recovering, has to make sure he steps in. Otherwise, they will either get disqualified or they have to suffer some kind of penalty for having only two duelists against a team of normally three in this tournament. So, thanks to Crow, they discovered about Team Catastrophe and the Hookman thing, and the Team 5Ds ultimately beat Catastrophe. So now they eventually go into their newest opponents, Team Ragnarok. And it's kind of funny. It's not too long ago I wrapped up uh, God of War Ragnarok, and it's like all that stuff is still in my head. It's such a great game, but it's like you got these guys who got these, just like you got the signers. You got these three with the rune eyes, and they got they unlocked once they get a hold of their cards. You got Thor, Loki, and Odin, and uh and you got all their cards pretty much based off of Norse mythology. Like Tyr. They talk about Fimbulwinter, or at least obviously a Ragnarok. They view it as Ragnarok. You got all these Iliaster and a threat that they pose, and they call it Fimbulwinter. Fimbulwinter is coming. And all this dialogue speak just brings back God of War Ragnarok. I mean, like Norse mythology is just permeating all the pop culture stuff. Thank you, MCU. Of course, 5Ds is long since been out before the MCU even got off the ground floor. Clearly, but yeah. Well, technically no. When this season started, it started in late. It started in September of 2010, but that's the English air date. Technically, the Japanese air date was a year prior, but even still, by manga standards, it's even longer than that. So yeah, you can say that this is way long before, at least like a few years prior to the conception of the first Iron Man movie. So yeah. Anyway, uh, uh, so you got all these guys who got all these different cars based off different Norse mythology stuff. You got a car with like a Tyr. You got a track card Mjolnir. You got like golden apples, which in Norse mythology, the Norse gods use it to eat to retain their immortal lives. Uh, you got Fenrir and Jormungandr kind of cards. It's like very dope kind of stuff. And I like when Yu-Gi-Oh, the card game, base a certain archetype off of certain mythologies. Like you got the Burning Abyss or the Inferno based off of Dante's Inferno with all these demons and everything like that. And then you got, of course, the Aesir, the Norse mythology with the Ragnarok cards. Then, of course, you got the spirit cards based off of kind of like the Hindu gods. And, of course, you got a lot of angel-like archetypes based off of Christian mythology. And then so on from there. But I don't think they did something for Japanese mythology, but more so the yokai demons, but not so much as the Japanese gods. I don't think they haven't done anything with the African gods or Native American gods. But I think it's pretty cool if they the Konami do something to create cards based off of like African, Native American type of cards. I don't think they did anything with Celtic either. Well, no, I don't think you can count Celtic Guardian. I don't think. I mean, you can add it to the archetype, but you know And of course, Team Ragnarok, you know, really, owned the zone for uh, quite amount of time. Of course, one of the duelists, the one who wielded it, Thor, had a grudge against Jack because his father was ill. Lester and Goodwin found this guy, agreed to pay him if he loses against Jack, because they still trying to build up Jack as his number one duelist, unbeknownst to Jack, who always prides himself as who duels honorably to his full capabilities, as well as making sure his opponent duel his full capabilities to prove himself as a true duelist. And of course, this wrecks Jack when he comes to find out from Lester that what this guy said is true, that he had to throw the match because Goodwin paid him off to lose just to, jack up his fame and celebrity. And now, you can say coincidentally, but it's writing. Of course, they get all their, once they duel again, all the same cards. They call it fate. Want us to, recreate the same standard up to the point where the guy threw the match. So now everything's playing out to his full capabilities, and it's hard to say. I guess you can say that he will still have lost to Jack, but would have gone all out properly. But who knows? But they get to play it out thoroughly this time around, and is very neck and neck with their dueling skills. But Jack ultimately won out, and then of course he summoned his ultimate Archfiend monster. Crap. There's another Red Dragon Archfiend that requires two tuna monsters and a Red Dragon Archfiend to summon. I'm blanking on that freaking card's name. But anyway, I'm blanking on his name right now. But he summoned it. He beats out the guy. Then here comes another guy. I'm blanking on Team Ragnarok's individual names. I know the leader is Hodor, but who wields Odin. But then you got the second guy who wields Loki. And I can't help but think about the MCU characters. I'm sorry, but I'm thinking of Tom Hiddleston and Chris Hemsworth and Anthony Hopkins when you think about Loki, Odin, and Thor. And Loki, and the guy who wields Loki goes up against Crow. And of course, you got these guys who more than often utilize traps in their dueling strategy. So they're constantly countering each other, and it ultimately ends in like a draw kind of thing. But Crow, by and large, kind of like, we'll just fly out this one until like the guy pulled like a thing to keep Loki and Thor on the field for Hodor to wield. So now he ends up summoning his Odin at the same time having Thor and Loki on his side of the field for Yusei to deal with, and then ultimately like Yusei beats him out in a grand display. It was so much fun. The duels between like Team Ragnarok and the duel between 5Ds and Team Unicorn. It's probably like one of my favorite duels out of the season. Oh, I almost forgot about the return of Callan, because Callan came back after the events of Earthbound Immortal arc, and he's regretting his mistakes and harm he caused other people. Even prior to that, his turn on his own friends that landed him in jail in the first place. He pretty much kind of punishing himself. He goes to this. It's kind of like an old West town. It's kind of weird because like I'm not sure where New Domino City is kind of set on the map, but during the sub stuff that I watched, they visit his name is Boomer in the sub. I'm blanking on his uh, dub name, but the one who uses like trap reactor Wi-Fi and RE and all this stuff. I'm blanking on his doggone name, but the guy that Goodwin kind of caused his like disappearance of his family and everything like that, and he used like a spike on his wheel to try to take out Goodwin in one of the tournaments in the first season. He makes a return, and it's clearly they're Peruvian, I guess, because they go to the Nazca lines, which is in Peru, and somehow like Yusei and Jack go visit him, and they just drive there, and it's like, where is this place set? Because y'all just drive there, and then this Crash Town is what it's called. It's pretty much like an old west style town, and it's like maybe I could buy that a little bit more, or it's a little more so on the outskirts. I could probably buy that a little more, but it's just weird kind of landscape. It's so kind of just odd. But anyway, they Yusei gets a this note from this strange woman who says like, oh, Callan needs your help and blah blah blah. So he goes there and tries to ask his friend to come back because like what he did wasn't his fault, blah blah blah. But like he just wants to just resign himself to punish himself by dueling with this gang, because like this town is kind of like a mining kind of town where you mine this ore in this mountain that makes up part of the makeup for duel runners or something like that. And if you lose a duel here, you're sent off to the mine to just mine for this ore until you just drop dead. And of course, Callan, being like a great duelist himself with his Infernity cards, he's never beaten. And then Yusei decides to duel him. They end up getting taken to the mine. It goes in this little adventure trying to rescue this town, and the enforcers, Callan's crew, Jack, Crow, Yusei, all team up together to save this town. And it was an awesome, warm-hearted moment where Callan, after trying to reunite the enforcers for so long, misguided as it was, he finally got his crew back together. And just like early on in like the flashbacks, when trying to liberate their section of Satellite from these other gangs, they're doing it for this this small town, and they just thoroughly stomp everybody. And the girl who ends up getting Yusei to try to help Callan turns to be working for the ultimate bad guy in this little small town, this douchebag of a guy who's kind of like Biff from Back to the Future, that kind of mentality. And they get taken to jail, and like people from the mountains gets liberated, and Callan decides to stay, help this town get on its feet again, and look out for everybody. And this is the last time you see Callan. But Callan, I kind of wish that Will came back to help out his friends in some manner, with Iliaster and the others. Once I rewatched, because I only saw the third season sub one time, it was many years ago. I haven't really watched it since. So maybe once I rewatch it, we'll see Callan one more time. But so far as I can tell, this is the last time you see Callan. But I think Callan's an amazing character. Who got so many layers to him. He's just like an awesome duelist, and like I really wish he had more Callan. He's really, really good supporting character. One of my favorites in 5Ds. So anyway, during the main story, after beating Ragnarok, now they are going against Iliaster, and of course they go against Lester and Primo, and they ultimately summon uh, uh, this massive Weisel, Grand Weisel, or Grand uh, uh, Core thing, and Jacob shows 5Ds what happens in the future, and turns out that Jacob, and I will uh, do a spoiler review on Bonds Beyond Time at some point next week, because I want to, because I already did like uh, a couple of years ago, did like a spoiler review on Yu-Gi-Oh! The movie, the first movie, which you can check out on my YouTube channel. I wanted to, I'm pretty sure I brought it up there. I wanted to wait until I covered all of GX and at least, most of the Yu-Gi-Oh! 5Ds, because I think by this point, you can, make an argument that you can go into Bonds Beyond Time, because now you got all three. It was a huge deal. I wish I would have saw it in the theater at the time, but I didn't have the money, or like a job or money to afford to go to the theater to see it. It's one of those things like, I really wish I would have gone to the theater to see it, because oh my God, it would have been like just, it was probably like a huge deal for Yu-Gi-Oh fans to see all three main characters from different generations, Yugi, Jaden, and Yusei, team up to deal with this villain named Paradox, not Paradox to confuse the twin duelists, but Paradox, who is one of the associates in the future for Jacob, who it turns out Jacob, Lester, and Primo are the same person. Their real name is Aporia, who asked Zone, who make a brief appearance here. We'll go into who Zone is once we cover season 3. But he asked Zone on his Primo's deathbed to like create robot variants of him through different moments in his timeline, to go through the mission of stopping the second inner D reaction. So he creates a moment where he was a child when he lost his parents during the initial catastrophe, then his 20-something-year-old self when he's fighting back against the Mechlor emperors, who was attacking the city or whatever. I don't even know how even that is feasible, or what even just cause these giant Mechlor robot things. And why we use cards based off of the very things that help with the destruction of your livelihood. And then of course his elderly age. And but yeah, like once we cover like Bonds Beyond Time, we'll bring up about, because I don't think they even brought that up in the movie, that he comes from like they brought up he's from like a far off future, even from Yusei's point of view, but he never brought up that he was associated of Aporia. But anyway, so an awesome duel, because like of course Jack and Crow individually kind of like lost to Jacob and then Primo. They end up combining, and like everything's like destruction's going all over the place. But Yusei, of course, through the power of teamwork, with his Jack and Crow by his side, leaving certain cards behind for him to be able to kick this duel into overdrive and just summon Shooting Star Dragon. And of course, I almost forgot, he used this Cell Synchro being taught by this guy, I'm blanking on his name, but it's this kid with amnesia that Mina and Truz asked Yusei and the others to look after and everything like that. But he is also some kind of associate of Zone, which we'll get more into that in the final season. But nobody knows that yet. But he's been helping Yusei out here and there, which, like I said, we'll get more into why uh, uh, in the future. But they, through the power of teamwork, they managed to take down Aporia. But yeah, I mean, like, I covered stuff that's kind of like my issues. Some being nitpicked, some are clear plot holes. But overall, I freaking love 5Ds. Once eventually I get into Zexal and then Arc 5, and I still haven't watched Vrains yet. I haven't watched that period. I wanted to wait until I rewatch Zexal and Arc 5 and come in fresh with Vrains. I want to do it all in order. But I'm kind of dreading. There's stuff I like in Zexal and Arc 5s, but God, it's just, I think Arc 5 is probably like the most egregious. I think Zexal seems like a parody of Yu-Gi-Oh! With their wild hair and weird certain artistic designs. But I think Arc 5, we'll get into that, is certain story-wise I'm not too thrilled with. But anyway, speaking of art, I loved certain 3D graphics they show off here and there in 5Ds, where you see like certain, the dragons, they get 3D kind of, graphics and everything like that. It's just like, it's not like perfect. It was great, kind of design at the time, but it's still kind of good. But of course, with today's technology, I'm pretty sure they would have like upped the style a little bit better. But I like what we got, and I think it's like smart to utilize certain artistic designs where it counts. Like when like a crash or a moment where like one time Jack crashed and his body's kind of like tumbling. You see more of like a 3D kind of design of the body tumbling. It isn't like a 2D design. So that kind of thing, I think that's brilliantly handled. But yeah, I kind of wish they didn't. Certain choices they did with certain characters, kind of like kind of wish they didn't like take. Like I said, it's probably more so they based off the obviously the manga, but I don't know. I gotta read the manga to be certain. 8 times out of 10, I'm pretty sure that the manga did this. They kind of like all respect to Kazuki Takahashi, all respect, but it's just I just don't not like the idea that certain of the female characters especially, it's just like they lose their edge, and it's like I don't care for that. A lot of the characters end up losing their edge where we initially liked them in the beginning, but then they kind of take a back seat or get super downplayed. But anyway, everything else I really thoroughly enjoyed from 5Ds. But leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought about the entirety of season 2, 3, whatever of the Road to Destiny arc. With like the Crosstown arc, the stuff with like the duels with like the stuff with Team Ragnarok and Unicorn. There are certain fillers that I got a kick out of, like you see like Jack dealing with local thugs that's taking advantage of the people there, like this mobster is trying to like extort people, kind of like when Jack, steps up, even though, he's learning about like taking certain responsibilities for thinking about others than himself, kind of situation. Uh, Crow, it's like it's always Crow's always like the Robin Hood. He's like always fighting for the people. I like moments like that. I think you can still utilize that during the main story, but he's like helping this landlord lady reconnect with her son. Uh, I think that's kind of sweet. Uh, but I think the orphan kids that he's looking after, I think they're kind of like very obnoxious. They're just cute for the sake of being cute. Oh, my favorite, filler, this honestly is with Crow, uh, you know, uh, reconnecting with this guy who is trying to find the Blackwing Dragon, who they used to belong to one of their old friends growing up, and of course he wanted to get rich with like dual, like making dual runners. Of course, the friend doesn't want to sell, and then he ends up getting killed by said friend, taking the card, or at least taking like the blueprints so he can make money and becoming this big fancy kind of CEO, whatever. And uh, Crow going against this guy and taking him down. That part is really like a good Crow Hogan story, and not a lot of anime, especially like Yu-Gi-Oh. I mean, sometimes I do, sometimes I don't. Like give like a moment for other characters besides the main character, their moment in the sun and their own hurdles they have to go through that hasn't got nothing to do with the main plot. This one is more brilliantly handily done. It's kind of like with Cyrus. I think the best Cyrus story, honestly, is in the sub in the final season when Zane couldn't duel anymore and he has to duel on his behalf, and it shows the growth of Cyrus ultimately. Uh, but and that kind of thing. That's probably like the only good Cyrus story that I actually cared about. And then of course you got like Joey Wheeler, who has his moments. I think I think Duel Monsters kind of took more time into establishing you know personal character arcs with certain supporting characters, because they still getting their footing ultimately. So unlike GX5Ds and so on, where you get to find that right balance between, getting as much duels as possible, as well as telling like a good story. I think Joey has plenty of time to have like personal stories, especially during Duelist Kingdom fighting for his sister. Uh, but anyway, I will see you guys in a little bit. I got some comic book reviews to cover, two reviews to cover, Spider-Man related. So I will see you guys soon. I gotta get this stuff locked and loaded for today. And yeah, so I'll see you guys in a minute.